This course is presented to you free of charge by TTJ Tech Services of www.ttjtech.biz and by Stir It Up of www.stiritup.com. And remember, stir is spelled with a U, not an I, so that's STURITUP.com. TTJ Tech Services and Stir It Up are pleased to offer this course to you, to the glory of God, and to the benefit of all those who listen. And amen. Well, praise God, and welcome to Session 2 of TV for the 21st century. Today, we are going to get into how to set up the Apple TV. Now, we did talk on Monday about how to physically connect that to the television. We talked about how you could use your TV's speakers or your sound bar or home theater system, or you could use a HomePod or even a pair of HomePod or HomePod mini speakers as default speakers for your Apple TV. And I want to just revisit that a moment because I think we talked a little about that in answer to a question that somebody asked. But basically, your Apple TV is by default going to play sound through whatever everything else on the TV plays sound through. And that could be a sound bar, it could be some sort of a home theater system, or it could even be the built-in speakers in the television. But you also have the choice of using the HomePods. If you've got one or two HomePods in the same room, configured as a stereo pair, or even HomePod mini devices, they can be the default speakers for your Apple TV, and you'll have the option of making that selection when you set up the Apple TV. Or if you get your HomePods later, after getting an Apple TV, you'll have the option then of making them the speakers, or you can always go in manually and change that setting as well. Now, if you missed this session from Monday, we would encourage you to go to our YouTube channel where we do have a brand new playlist called TV for the 21st Century 2025. And you can listen to all the recordings, just one so far. The second will be up after today and going on and so on. And we also do have this on our podcast as well on TTJ Tech Talk. So you can listen back to anything you might have missed or just want to hear again. Today, we are going to talk about the setup process after you have connected the TV to your brand new Apple TV set-top box, which you'll do using HDMI. What do you do? And of course, the first thing is you'll have to turn on the television and get it onto the correct input. And that could be using your manufacturer's remote or something like that. If you are not sure, you might have to try a couple of inputs. You might need some sighted assistance depending on the TV. The modern TVs do have screen readers built in, so you may not need sighted assistance, but it's a possibility. And this should be, in theory at least, the only time you'll have to manually turn on the TV and switch to the correct input, because once everything is set up, the Apple TV ought to do that for you going forward. But again, that does depend on the age of your TV, and we'll talk more about that as we progress through this thing. Once you do get onto the correct input, the Apple TV kind of loads just like turning on a brand new iPhone or iPad. And once you get past the Apple logo and so on, it's going to go to a very similar setup screen, just like your other Apple devices. And also, just like your other Apple devices, you can have VoiceOver right out of the box. You can turn VoiceOver on by pressing the back button 3 times quickly. That is the accessibility shortcut. It is not the side button on the remote. It is the back button. And just to review, in case you didn't remember or you didn't get to hear it yet, the back button is the button that is on the top left-hand side of the Apple remote, just below the round circle click pad. Top left button, it's slightly indented, slightly concave. You press that button 3 times during the setup process, and it will indeed turn on VoiceOver, and it will also program the accessibility shortcut automatically to always turn VoiceOver on and off unless you change it. If you would miss this opportunity, just like an iOS device, you can go in and later configure the accessibility shortcut to toggle VoiceOver. So that's the first thing. What's going to happen when you get to the setup screen initially is you're going to have to either click the click pad or press a button, the back button, one time first to connect the um, remote with the Apple TV. And so for that process, we want to encourage you to be pretty close to your Apple TV, and then you can go further away because it does operate by Bluetooth. And so after it's paired, you're good to go in within Bluetooth range. I'm not sure why my puppy is barking all of a sudden, but I apologize if you can hear her in the background. You might not, but anyway, so you're in Bluetooth range. So once you get that one-time press done, you're paired, and now you can do the triple click that I described to you. So again, the process is you get onto the correct input, you click or press the back button, and then you can pretty much immediately triple click to get VoiceOver to turn on. If it didn't work the first time, give it a few seconds and try it again. Now, one of the nice things about Apple devices, as you probably already know, is that they often support automatic setup. And that means we can use one device to set up another. You might have heard of this when it comes to setting, for example, setting up a new iPhone using your old iPhone or iPad or what have you. Well, the same is true with your Apple TV. You can use your iPhone, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, maybe your iPad as well. But I usually use the iPhone because it's nice and small. I can get it right up to the Apple TV very easily there. And you can use your iPhone to set up your Apple TV. The process for doing this, what you'll want to do once you triple click that button and get VoiceOver turned on, you'll want to unlock your iPhone with your Face ID or whatever and get to the home screen. And at this point in time, I think there might be one or two screens. It's been a while since I've done it, that you actually have to use the remote for, like, to verify that you want English, United States, just like with your Apple devices. And the way to do this is to use the click pad, press the either up and down or left and right, whichever way it asks you to move, until you find what you want, and then click the center of the click pad to actually make your selection. So if you're on the country or region question, you'll go to I don't remember if it's up and down or if it's left and right, but you'll move until you hear United States, which should be the first one in the list, and then you just click the center button. After you agree to the privacy agreement and so on, you will eventually be asked if you want to set this up using automatic setup. And at that point, you simply bring your unlocked iPhone up to the Apple TV set-top box and bring it pretty close. And then the two devices will recognize each other, and you can finish the process on your iPhone. Now, what this will do is this will automatically enter the Wi-Fi information. So you'll have to make sure your iPhone is on your correct Wi-Fi network for your home. I probably should have mentioned that first, but you do want to make sure that that is the case. And you also, I do think you need to have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi enabled on your iPhone for this. And I also think you have to now have two-factor authentication enabled for your Apple account in order for this to work. But anyway, assuming you meet all those requirements, your iPhone will set up your Apple TV. And what it's going to do is it's going to copy the Wi-Fi settings. It's going to copy your Apple account information so that you will be automatically signed into your Apple ID or Apple account with your Apple TV without having to manually enter the Apple account email and password and all of these sorts of things. And so it's going to take care of a lot of this stuff for you. And then you will get a notification when it's finished. And there'll be a couple more things you'll have to do on the Apple remote itself. Again, using the click pad, clicking in whatever direction you need to, and then clicking the center to confirm your selection. And these are going to be things like, do you want to download screensavers and how often? There's some really cool screensavers. I'll talk more about them later. And you'll be asked if you want to allow, I think, maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but I think you're going to be asked if you wish to allow purchases and with or without a password. And you have the choice to require the password every time you want to make a purchase, or you can have it not required for 20 minutes after you make a purchase, so that if you're making a series of purchase within a 20-minute period, you don't have to, or you can say never, which not typically recommended, although this is an in-home device. And I suppose a reason people might want to do that is if they rent a lot of movies and stuff and they don't want to have to, but I think I have mine set on the second option. The other thing you're going to be asked is you are going to be asked about your TV provider. Now, you might remember that we talked about TV providers the other day. We talked about how certain TV providers have their own app for the Apple TV. If you attended our broadcast on our session on Monday, you know that we said, for example, Comcast has the Xfinity Stream app for Apple TV. You know that we said DirecTV has an app for the Apple TV. We also told you there are some TV providers that are streaming only that have apps like Hulu, which gives you access to Hulu Plus Live TV if you're a subscriber, or YouTube TV, Sling TV, these kinds of things. And in addition to that, you might remember that we mentioned that even some TV providers that don't have their own Apple TV apps still allow you to watch certain content through a thing called TV Everywhere, where if you get a channel in your package, if you subscribe to that certain channel, you will be able to download apps for those channels, like a Food Network Go app, HGTV, those kinds of things. And so when you set up your Apple TV, it's going to ask you to confirm your TV provider. And it may get this information directly from your iPhone as well, if your iPhone is already signed in with that. And then what it's going to do is it's going to, in some cases, automatically, what it's going to do is going to depend on the provider. There's several different ways that this can work.
There's a way to avoid all of that. You could, like you just said, you could do it on your iPhone, but there's actually a spot in settings and the accounts section where you can put in your TV provider information, and when you download one of those apps and log into it or attempt to log into it, it won't even ask you for that information because it'll already be pre-filled in there.
Right. So if you have this process and you can do it during the setup, it's gonna save it to that exact same location. And if not, you can go back into settings and accounts where he's
right,
and
you
later.
can actually do it on your phone too. There's a TV
provider
section on your phone, and
that's
like you said, if you're signed into the same Apple ID, it will carry over to that Apple TV, assuming you're using the same Apple ID,
right?
And that'll cut out the middleman. You won't even have to worry about that. Right. Comcast and I think Spectrum has SSO, so when you wouldn't have to worry about it there. But Hulu Live and YouTube TV or whoever your provider is, besides the other two, you would definitely have to enter that information. And some of the apps still make you go to the website and authenticate with the code and stuff like that. But
yeah, it's a little bit convoluted in the sense that there's different ways depending on the provider. So probably the easiest option is Apple's single sign-on technology, and that allows for you to save the actual username and password, not just the provider, but the actual credentials in your account settings. They're synced with iCloud, so that when you download an app that uses TV Everywhere, it will automatically sign you in. It's just going to say, do you want to use your sign in information for Spectrum? Yep, allow. And then it automatically signs you in. And actually, I think Spectrum even takes that a step further with what they call zero sign-on, which is where you don't even have to enter the information one time as long as you're on your home Wi-Fi. Now, Comcast is a bit interesting. Comcast technically doesn't really support Apple's single sign-on, but they sort of have a little bit of a compromise, which is that if you're on your home Wi-Fi, your devices will automatically be signed in. So it's sort of an in-between step. It kind of functions somewhere in the middle, not quite as seamless as if they used Apple single sign-on, but definitely not as involved as the third option that I'm going to tell you about. The third option is there are certain providers that don't offer any of those methods, and certain TV Everywhere apps that don't support them anyway. In those cases, you have to sign in within each app. You go into an app like, let's just say, Food Network. Now, that's not a good example because Food Network does support single sign-on, but let's just pretend, right? So you go into Food Network and it says, okay, to watch this, you have to authenticate with your provider. Go to foodnetwork.com/activate or whatever it is, on a nearby device. It could be your phone or an iPad, a computer, whatever. And then it's going to say enter, 6J215Z, whatever, and you have to enter this code on that device and they communicate with each other. You sign in on the phone and then your Apple TV is signed in. That is the sort of old way of doing it. And fewer apps require that, but depending on the provider, that may still be necessary. Now, Hulu does support single sign-on. DirecTV does support single sign-on. I'm not sure about YouTube TV. I think Sling might. But again, this is a process that you will have to experiment with, and it's also becoming less and less necessary if the provider has their own app, right? So again, if you're using something like Xfinity or YouTube TV or Hulu, where you actually have their app that gives you access to all the channels, you really don't have as much need for the TV everywhere component of this. But Apple has still made it really easy in many cases to activate that, and it saves that provider information. So that's another part of this that I just wanted to talk about during the setup process, that you may be asked if you want to download the app for your provider and so on. And once this is all done, you're going to be taken to your Apple TV, tvOS home screen. And this is where we're going to spend a bit of time now, because your tvOS home screen is very much like the home screen of your iPhone or iPad. It's got all your apps. And you move through this home screen using the clickpad of your remote. Now, by default, I apologize. I need to mention one other thing. You also may be asked if you want to enable one home screen. And that's sort of the way that tvOS keeps a backup. They don't really do traditional iCloud backups per se of your Apple TV, but when you enable one home screen, they kind of do, because the purpose of one home screen is to make every Apple TV mirror the home screen of that setup. So in other words, you can, put in another Apple TV and it will automatically download the same apps and put them in the same places and so on. So that's up to you. If you want that experience, you can do that. If you want each Apple TV to have different things, you can say no to that. But I did forget to mention that. Praise God for reminding me, because that does have to do with the home screen too. So we want to make sure you're probably going to see that during setup as well. All right, now back to what I was going to say. The home screen has all your apps. You move around on the home screen by using the click pad. By default, you can click or you can swipe. So for example, if I want to move to the right, I can press the right side of the click pad multiple times. Each time I press it, I'll move by one icon. But I can also swipe to the right, and that's going to move me as well. Now, the home screen supports moving in all four directions, up, down, left, and right, because the home screen is a grid and you have columns and rows. Each row is going to have 6 apps, 6 columns across. Used to be 5. They added a new one recently. And so you can get 6 apps typically on the Apple TV home screen. Now, before we go any further, it is necessary for us to explain a little bit about how VoiceOver works on Apple TV in contrast to how it works on iOS and iPad.
Before you go any further, just like it added a row, just like on the phone and stuff, but also point out the fact that on the Apple TV, you could have folders of apps also, because that's what I do. I actually have mine set up with folders at the end of each row. Like I have one folder that's a live TV folder, I have a sports folder and news folder, and then my utilities where my settings, music, and some other stuff that I don't use often are. But yeah, on the Apple TV, and when you have one home screen on, if you have it and you get a new Apple TV, or you have multiple home screen or multiple iPhones, Apple TVs, when you set up that second Apple TV, it will put those apps in them folders for you. There was a glitch on it a few years ago, but they have since fixed it.
Absolutely. And it will keep the folder structure. So just like iPhone and iPad, you can create folders. You can organize your apps into folders, move them around, however you want to do that. All of that applies. And we will get into a good bit of that probably next week. Now, I really need to just go over a little bit of voiceover concepts with you here because there are a couple slight differences from the way that voiceover works on your iPhone and iPad. At the core, it's the same thing, right? It's swipe to move, or in this case, you can click to move because of the click pad. And we know that instead of the double tap, you can just click the center button that will activate. We talked about that on Monday. And so that part is very much the same as what you have on your iPhone and your iPad. Now, the difference being that the remote is kind of functioning as a pointing device. You're not interacting directly with the screen like you are on an iPhone and an iPad. You have sort of a middleman. And so there are some things that occur, and we want to kind of talk about the fact that voiceover on the Apple TV has two very distinct operating modes. Two different operating modes. This was added and refined over a course of multiple versions, I kind of think. And it's very important to understand which mode you're in and how to switch modes. The two modes that VoiceOver has on the Apple TV are known as navigation mode and exploration mode. You are going to spend probably 99% of your time on the Apple TV in navigation mode. You almost never need exploration mode, but it is there when you need it. In navigation mode, you can move in multiple directions. You can basically use the Apple TV in exactly the same way as your sighted counterparts because there's no need to change it. There's no need to deviate from it. And we are going to talk about a little bit of an option that you have when within navigation mode, but I don't want to get ahead of us here. But so that's basically the mode you're going to spend most of your time in. But let's suppose you really do need to take a more granular look at what is on the screen. You need to be able to read by character, or you need to just explore the screen without affecting anything. You can do that in exploration mode. In exploration mode, you have a voiceover cursor and you even have a rotor. Now, technically, you have a rotor in navigation mode, but it's very, very watered down. There are very few things in the rotor when you're in navigation mode. But you have a full-fledged rotor in exploration mode that you can customize in settings, add things, take them away, just like you can on your other Apple devices. And you use it the same way with the two-finger rotation on the screen. Now, here is the way you switch modes. To go back and forth between the two modes, you're going to put two fingers on the click pad, and then you're going to tap 3 times. Not click, but tap. So it's a two-finger triple tap, which switches you between navigation mode and exploration mode. And I am fairly confident, although not 100%, because as I say, it's been quite a while since I've done a new setup on an Apple TV, and I'm not sure that I've ever done one in tvOS 18, truthfully. But it is, I think, in navigation mode nowadays by default. But if it's not, and there's a couple of ways to know. If you don't seem to be really accomplishing much, you're probably not in navigation mode. The other thing is really listen very carefully if you can, because when you're in navigation mode, you know what you're going to have? You're going to have navigation clicks just like you do with voiceover, unless you're like Trainer Cliff and you turn them off because they get on your nerves. But by default, out of the box, you're going to have those clicks. And so if it sounds like your iPhone, when you swipe around and you hear a click before everything and you hear voiceover sounds and that sort of thing, that is exploration mode. That is not navigation mode. It's the mode called exploration mode. It's the mode that allows you to look around on the screen without really doing anything. And it's not the mode you want to stay in the vast majority of the time. So when would I actually use exploration mode in a more specific way? Well, one example I can give you right away is, a few minutes ago, I mentioned to you how sometimes they display a code on the screen and you need to enter it. Well, depending on how the app is coded, some apps will read that very, very nicely for you. JTABIF. But other apps will say, enter the code datif. What in the world is that? Because it's not separating those. And so if you want to read that letter by letter, you're going to have to go into exploration mode with a 2-finger triple tap. You're going to have to swipe left and right until you're on the code. You're going to have to set the rotor to characters and then swipe down because it's exactly the same as your rotor on the iPhone. Rotate with 2 fingers left and right, and then swipe up and down to move by the rotor value. And you can read by character. When you're done, don't forget to 2-finger triple click again because you want to get back to navigation mode. You don't want to stay in exploration mode. And now you say to me, well, characters is not in my rotor. Well, then fix it. You know how to do that, right? Settings, accessibility, voiceover, rotor, just like iPhone and iPad. This is why these fundamentals are so crucial. So it's the same idea, but we have 2 different modes here that allow us to have a little more flexibility and control over things. And as I said, I'll say it one more time, most often you're going to want to stay in navigation mode. Now, within navigation mode, there is one other setting that I want to talk about right now. We won't talk about most of the settings until next week, but I do want to talk about this one because some people, maybe there are various reasons for it, that some people just find the remote to be overly sensitive. Every time they swipe, they end up swiping 12 times instead of 1 time. And that is by design. It's designed to sort of pay attention to how aggressively you swipe so that if there's a row where there's a list of like 78 items, you don't have to swipe 1 item at a time. You can take some very big swipes and you can move like 30 items at a time to get more quickly to where you want to go. But some people don't like that. And what they end up doing is disabling the swiping option because you can do that in settings so that it's click only. But I actually propose a different option. Of course, it's personal preference. It's up to you, no right or wrong. But I actually like the ability to swipe and click. And so my option is just get used to it. I say just play around with it and you'll figure out how much you need to swipe and how much you don't. If you're finding it hard to get used to, you can adjust the sensitivity of the click pad. And then maybe you don't find yourself moving 30 some times when you really don't want to. But there is yet a third option. I don't do this. Okay, this is not the way I have it set, but there is a third option for voiceover users, and that's a mode called follow focus. Now, follow focus is a subsetting within your navigation mode. There are 2 choices, direct touch and follow focus. If you've taken any of our classes or been a part of anything we've done where we've taught the fundamentals, you know that direct touch means it's exactly what our sighted counterparts do. No difference. It's as if voiceover is not even running. And we still hear the speech, but we move in the way that a sighted user moves. And that's especially true on the Apple TV because we're not touching the screen anyway. We're just using the remote. So why not use direct touch mode? But if you don't want to use direct touch, you can use follow focus. And I actually think they don't call it follow focus anymore. So I'm going to turn on my Apple TV and I'm going to check what it is called because I think they changed the name. I'll be able to find it very quickly. I'm going to go into my settings. Okay, I don't know how well you can hear that, if at all, but I'm going into my settings. I'm going to accessibility. Now, see, I'm clicking down right now. I could swipe, but I'm clicking, and I go voiceover, and we call it navigation style. And you have 2 options. Oh, they do still call it follow focus here. Okay, so yeah, it's under navigation style, and you have 2 choices. You have direct touch and follow focus. If you pick follow focus, what's going to happen is that even when you swipe, it's going to limit that swipe to 1 move per swipe. Okay, so that's another way to customize the click pad a little bit if you want to be able to swipe, but you don't want it to be as seemingly sensitive. And as I said, we're not going to cover all the settings till next week. And even then, I don't know that we'll cover all the settings, but we'll cover some of them. But I wanted to introduce those 2 things right away, the direct touch versus follow focus and the navigation versus exploration. Now, remember, navigation versus exploration, you don't change in your settings. You do that with the 2-finger triple tap. Okay, so getting back to now the home screen, And now that you understand those principles, I am operating in navigation mode with direct touch. That means I can swipe, I can click, I can do whatever I want to move around. And your first row of home screen icons at the top is kind of going to be equivalent to the dock that's at the bottom of your iPad or iPhone, in that these apps are there, but the major difference is your home screen is not going to have multiple pages on Apple TV anyway. It's only going to all be on one big page that just keeps expanding. So then why am I saying that it's sort of like the dock then? Because it is the top row and it offers special features. In this case, it offers what's known as top shelf content. The TV app is going to be probably the very first one on the left. And we'll talk about the TV app today. And if I swipe up while my focus is on the TV app, I'm going to get TV app content right on the home screen. Like it's going to show me what I was recently watching, or it might show me new releases or trending content, different things of that nature. And for example, if I go over here to the Photos app and I swipe up, it's showing me some memories. And it lets me click on this memory from July 2011 that it thinks I ought to see, and I can immediately be taken right into that. So there's top shelf content for most of the apps on the top row. Now, I don't know if the top row is exactly the same by default, or if I've changed mine. I don't remember, to be honest with you. I feel like this is the default, but I could be wrong. But I have TV, music, photos, arcade, fitness, and FaceTime. They are pretty much self-explanatory if you've ever used any Apple device. We're going to spend a good bit of time on the TV app. That is the Apple TV app. It is not to be confused with Apple TV Plus. Apple TV Plus is accessed from within inside of the TV app, but they are two entirely different things, and they serve two different purposes. So we'll talk about that. And then music, of course, you know. And the best way to listen to music on your Apple TV is with an Apple Music subscription. But if you don't have one, you can still access your iCloud music either by having iTunes Match or by purchasing your content from Apple. We then had photos. Again, the best way to use the Photos app is with iCloud Photos, because then you can access all your photos on your Apple TV, plus slideshows, memories, and a lot of other great things. Now, Arcade is the app that lets you explore the various games that are available on Apple Arcade if you've got a subscription for that, and you can download any of them onto your Apple TV and play them using your Siri remote, or some of the apps that they have in Apple Arcade do require game controllers. And I'll talk more about game controllers next week, but that is an option as well. And then Fitness is Apple Fitness Plus. Works great with your Apple Watch, with your iPhone. You have workout videos and custom workout programs and all sorts of things like that. And of course, the final one is FaceTime. Now, how do you use FaceTime on an Apple TV? Where's the camera? Well, the camera is going to come from your iPhone or iPad through a feature called Continuity Camera. And that may change in the future. There's a lot of rumors, a lot of speculation that we may eventually see an Apple TV with a camera, or an Apple TV / HomePod / camera combination. I don't know. Apple doesn't discuss unannounced products. And so I certainly don't know what the plans are there, but that has been highly rumored. But as of the recording of this session and the teaching of this session here today in January 2025, you have to use your iPhone or your iPad as the continuity camera with FaceTime on your Apple TV. And so when you open your FaceTime app on the Apple TV, it's going to instruct you to calibrate the camera by placing your iPhone or iPad in front of the television in the position that they tell you, and so on. The second row has, first of all, the App Store, which of course self-explanatory, right? If you've ever used anything Apple, that's where you're going to get the rest of your apps. Anything from Max and Peacock to, cooking apps and games and home design apps and, Pandora, Sirius XM, whatever else you want to have on your Apple TV. We'll talk about some of them again, probably on Monday, maybe a little bit on Wednesday. And then the next app is the podcast app. So that's Apple Podcasts. The next app I have is Search. That is kind of like your Spotlight. It's another way of searching. I'm going to tell you very soon about how you can use Siri to do those searches, but there is an actual search app here that you can use. And then the next one is called Computers. Now, we are not going to talk about that app today. That is going to be reserved for next Wednesday, when we're also going to have Trainer Cliff do our Infuse demonstration. So that'll be 1 week from today. But for now, just so you know, Computers allows you to access content from the TV app or music app and so on your computer, or if you have an older setup, a Windows setup, it's the iTunes app. And then it also has to be on the same network and so on. It's called home sharing. But again, we're going to discuss that next week. I don't want to get into that today. But that app is in my second row. And then the other app that I have here from Apple is called Settings. And of course, that's where you go to adjust your settings. Now, there are two other apps that, as far as I know, are still being included with the Apple TV when it ships from Apple, if I'm not mistaken. And they are called Movies and TV Shows. You can completely ignore those apps now. I think, I don't know, I've never tried to delete them, but I think I put mine in a folder, if I'm not mistaken, just to get them out of the way. And the reason for this is because all of their content has been moved over now to the TV app. I expect that those apps will, eventually be deprecated and not even be on the Apple TV if they haven't already been. But when you open them, it simply says like Movies is now in the TV app, the new home for all your movies and, stuff like that. And so that is how that's done. You can ignore the apps that are called Movies and TV Shows. But the TV app, which we're going to talk about, is the app where all of that stuff now happens. So the TV app, or the Apple TV app, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, is not to be confused with Apple TV Plus, which is a streaming service from Apple. The TV app is the home of Apple TV Plus for sure, but it's so much more than that. First and foremost, the Apple TV app integrates with many streaming services and apps. Not all. There's a few that have chosen not to share with Apple, like Netflix, for example, unfortunately does not integrate with the TV app. But the vast majority of the apps you will use, certainly Peacock, Paramount Plus, Max, Hulu, Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, several TV providers, Xfinity Stream, DirecTV, again, Hulu, a whole bunch of these do, and then even some of those TV Everywhere apps we mentioned, Food Network, Amazon Prime. There's just a ton of them. There's tons of apps that integrate with the TV app. And if you allow these apps to be connected to the TV app will then keep track of what you are watching and make it available to you across all of your devices. And so what I mean by that is if I open my TV app, it's going to show me what I have been watching, what episode number I'm on, what season I'm on. If I'm in the middle of a new season, when they release a new episode, it's going to make it available at the head of the queue in my TV app as well. And so this app is my favorite way to get started watching TV. The TV app is my favorite way to watch TV because it does keep track of everything. It also has recommendations based on what you watch. And as you can imagine, as with all things with Apple, like that, they learn from what your behaviors are and they get better and better the more you use them. And in addition to all of that, you have access to what are known as Apple TV channels. And these are third-party services that you can watch directly in the TV app without needing a separate app. And I say third party, but of course, Apple TV Plus is definitely one of them. But then, third party, Stars, actually Paramount Plus is one you can do that way with Showtime. Taste Made, PBS, I think PBS Living. What else? Hallmark, Hallmark Movie Club. There's quite a few of them available, and they are sort of built in. But the way this app works is best if I just show it to you, because if I try to explain it without not hearing it, or at least me telling you what I'm hearing, right? You might not hear voiceover, but I'm going to at least tell you what I'm experiencing here. So we're going to open the Apple TV app, and I'll click on it. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do, it says, voiceover right away says, press back or navigate back to show sidebar. This is a sidebar app. If you have taken any of our iPad courses, we got another one coming up next month. It starts at our crown jewel. Praise God. We're looking forward to it. But if you've ever taken our recent iPad courses, or if you've ever used a Mac, you know that the iPad and the Mac sometimes use sidebars. And these are vertical bars that go along the left or right-hand side, typically the left-hand side of the screen, with different options instead of a tab view. Where the iPhone uses tabs, the iPad often uses, and the Mac often uses sidebars. And just like with iPad, sometimes there'll be both on the Apple TV, depending on the app. But the TV app is a sidebar app. And it told me right away, press back or navigate back to view sidebar. So that means I either press that back button at the upper left, or I can actually click to the left, I happen to know, and it'll get me to that sidebar. Once I'm on the sidebar, I'm going to move up and down to navigate the sidebar. The sidebar has 7 things on it. The very top one is search. And then as I go down, I have home. I have Apple TV Plus. Of course, they have their own category for that because it's, a big part of this app. And then the next one I have down is MLS, which is because they have a partnership with Major League Soccer. We have sports, and we have store. And then the 7th one is library. So library, that's everything I own. If I've purchased a movie or a TV show from Apple, it's in the library. If I rent a movie from Apple, it's in the library. And sports allows you to pick your favorite sports teams and see what they're up to, real-time scores, and immediately be taken to the game if you happen to subscribe to a channel that gets the game. And then this one that I wanted to tell you about, store, that's where you can browse and rent and purchase all your movies and TV shows. There's just tons of stuff in there, in different categories. And of course you can search for stuff, but that's where you're going to make your purchases. Now, if I keep going down on the sidebar below that 7th item, below the library, the sidebar also has another section called channels and apps. And these are channels and apps that I already either subscribe to through the TV app or that I have apps installed for. So, for example, just read you some of these. I have A&E, AMC, Animal Planet, Bravo, CBS News, Discovery, Disney Plus, FilmRise, Food Network, Hallmark Plus, HGTV. You get the idea. All of these are apps that I have installed. And what's nice about this is something that I had actually really hoped Apple would do for years. And they did it, I think, last year. And it's so nice because it allows me to stay in the TV app, but browse the content of those apps. So, for example, let's say that I'm interested in Disney Plus. I can click on Disney Plus in the sidebar. And now I'm in the TV app still. I've not opened the Disney Plus app, but I'm in a section of the TV app that lets me see just the Disney Plus content. There's some featured content here. from Star Wars. So in this Disney Plus channel section of the TV app, I can go down and I can see the things I've been watching just on Disney Plus. Then I can see top charts, and these are any Disney Plus content. And because Disney Plus also includes content from Hulu and National Geographic and Marvel and all of these other things, I have a lot more than just Disney content here. So this is a great way to navigate. Again, all of that is on the sidebar. All of that is part of the left-hand side column that has the channels and apps and so forth. But I want to go back to the home section. I don't want to call it a tab because it's not a tab view, it's a sidebar. But I want to go to the home section, go back up all the way past those channels and back to home. And when you want to activate one of these, you have to click on it with the center button. Some sidebars you don't. Some sidebars, by simply selecting the item in the sidebar, it changes to that section, but not in the TV app. In the TV app, you have to click the center button to actually select the tab you want, or the section you want, excuse me. Okay, I'm in the home section now of the TV app, and this is where I'll have an opportunity to explain to you about the way that it keeps track of everything that we've been watching and makes it available later for you. The first row here is kind of a featured section. If you can see, they've got these big posters featuring things. Usually it's Apple TV Plus content. They're featuring Shrinking and Silo and Severance. But I want to go down to the second row by clicking down, and it says to me, continue watching. Now, here's what I have right now in continue watching. The first thing it has is apparently the Celtics are playing the Raptors right now, and that is a favorite team. I must have marked them as a favorite team. I don't even remember that because I really don't watch sports except for the Super Bowl, but I apparently did, and that's here. I can click on this. I don't know what app it would open, maybe Xfinity Stream, or maybe they're on Paramount or Peacock. I don't know. But if you have an app that supports it, it's going to open that app and immediately play the game, let you watch the game where it is right now in progress. Going to the right, here's an episode of Full House that my son, as I mentioned, he likes to watch that. And in between school and work today, he was watching. So this is season 2, episode 10, and it'll pick up right where we left off. Next up is Everybody Loves Raymond, season 3, episode 3. And again, I just click on it. It immediately starts playing. I don't have to know when it's on. I don't have to think, well, what day of the week did that come on? If it's as soon as it's available, it's going to show up here. And in the case of these shows, these are obviously older shows that we either own or we get on a streaming service. So I can just click and immediately I am taken into the app that I will use to watch them. So for Full House and Everybody Loves Raymond, they're going to stay in the TV app because I own those. If we look at something like, here's The Pioneer Woman, episode 4 of season 28. That's a Food Network show. It's a cooking show. I don't own that, but it's going to open up probably in Max for me, actually, because that is the app that is used to play most of the Food Network content. If you want to see other episodes of the same show, or you want to change what app is used to open that show or something like that, instead of just clicking on this, you're going to do, and here come these fundamentals again, because this is a predictable pattern. You're going to do a long press, just like on the iPhone and the iPad. You have a long press, except here it's a click and hold instead of a press and hold. You're actually going to click the center button and hold it down, and it's going to display a context menu. In this case, it's going to say go to episode or go to show. So if I go to show, it's going to show me the whole poster for the TV show, the description, all the episodes, the apps I can use to watch them. Maybe there's 4 or 5 different apps that I can use. Let's try it with Pioneer Woman. I'll hold the center button, and I'm going to go down to go to show, and then I'll click the center button. Okay. Right now I'm on a button that says resume episode. I can just continue. VoiceOver is now reading to me a description of the episode that is currently selected. Tells me she's going to make lemony salmon, she's going to make creamy chicken, and some kind of carbonara. I missed what it said, but it's reading me that whole description. Now, if I want to hear that description again, if I missed it or it didn't read it for some reason, I can press and hold the play button. Remember, that's the second row down on the left-hand side. You press and hold it. It's the play pause button. Hold it just for a second or two, and it will cause VoiceOver to read the entire screen. You don't need to be in exploration mode to do that. You can do that anywhere, even in navigation mode. And right here's a great example of I might want to hear again what the dishes were that she was going to make, so I could just press and hold that play button. But if I go down, if I go down on with the click pad now, the first option I have is remove from watch list. If I don't want it in there, I'm certainly not going to do that because I like this show. Now I'm down to the row of episodes. And if you go back up one row, it's going to take you to the row of seasons. It skips that the first time, but if you go back up, you can choose which season. I'm in the row of episodes. If I want to pick a different episode, I just click on it. If I go down again, that's a description of the episode. Here's a row of related content. A row of cast and crew tells me who's in this thing. But down one more time. This is what I wanted you to see. How to watch. This is a grid. You get 3 apps to a row, and then you have to go down. There's a ton of ways I can watch this show. If I want the first choice is Max, and I told you that was going to be the app that would probably open, the Max app, and it tells me I can watch seasons 1 through 37 in that app. If I go to the right, my next choice is Xfinity Stream. There's even more apps here. If I keep looking, I could use the HGTV app, the Animal Planet app, which is weird because it's a food app, but they've all kind of merged together. And so, there's so many different apps I could use to watch this. And I might even see a choice, if I keep going down, that I could buy this show or this season or this episode from the iTunes store. So you have a lot of different ways, depending on what you subscribe to, that you can watch these in, and that how to watch row is the way to do that. Now, again, when I'm finished, I either click on what I want, or if I don't want it right now, I just press the back button. And you can press the back button repeatedly. Every time you press it, it's going to take you back one level to the previous menu or the previous screen. If you want to immediately jump back to the home screen without going through all the levels, you can press and hold the back button for about 1 or 2 seconds. And finally, once you're on the home screen, if you press the home button, if you press the back button one more time, you get your screensaver. And I right now have Snoopy. And for those who don't know, there's no sound with it. So if you can't see it, you're not going to get this. But Snoopy's really cool because they have these animated Snoopy screensavers. Apple owns the right to the Peanuts franchise now, I guess, or they've licensed it. I don't know if they own it, but they have it. And so they have this Snoopy screensaver. And Snoopy does all kinds of stuff. A lot of them, Snoopy's just sleeping, but then he'll get up and he'll do something. He'll eat his food. We've had ones where it's snowing, and you can swipe up to pick different screensavers, even on the fly while they're on. You have like aerial screensavers, which like underwater and from outer space and different cities and stuff. You can have your own photo library, memories as screensavers. And so, you can choose these in settings, or you can choose them on the fly. And of course, they can come on automatically after a certain designated period of time of inactivity. But also, you can press the back button once you're on the home screen, and you can go to the screensaver. Now, the last thing I want to go over today, and then what we're going to do on Monday of next week, is we're going to come back and we're going to talk about playback controls while you're watching a movie or a show. We're going to talk about audio description for those who are interested in that. And we're going to talk about some of the third party, we're going to talk about some of the other Apple apps like music, photos, and so
I
on.
want to touch on something that you finished. Well, you just mentioned it, but because you were mentioning screensavers, you can also choose to have your iCloud photo library be your screensaver, or even show a slideshow or different random pictures if you're choosing as a screensaver, so you don't have to pick the or download the Apple ones.
Absolutely. You can use your memories, your photo. Yep. And again, the key there is having iCloud photos enabled. That's the thing you want to do there. So you know what to look forward to on Monday. Playback controls. Some of you are wondering, how do I, change things while I'm watching a show? How do I pause? We're going to talk about the some of the other Apple apps, and then next Wednesday, third party apps, remote servers. Trainer Cliff's going to give us a good discussion about that. But for today, the rest of what I want to talk about, there's just two other things very quickly that I want to talk about today. One is SIRI. And to use SIRI, you must hold down the side button on the right-hand side of your remote. If you happen to have your AirPods in and you have them currently connected to the Apple TV, then you can use the wake phrase, hey, SIRI, or whatever, if that setting is enabled. But by default, that's not going to happen, or I should say, that's not going to happen at all when you're not using AirPods. Instead, you press and hold the side button. And so you can ask SIRI to do anything from tell you the weather to search for a movie or show. So, I'll press the side button right now and I'll just say, show me some good kids movies. Now I've let go of the button, and what it does, the voiceover said kids and family, and on my screen, if I use the click pad, I can find. I have to go up and down to find these, not left and right. It's got Frozen, Inside Out, Paddington, Mary Poppins, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Pinocchio, The Iron Giant, and on and on and on and on. And any of them that I want, I just click it and it's going to tell me how I can watch it. Some of them might be on streaming services that I have. Some of them I might have to buy or rent. Some of them I might already own. But it's kind of a universal search across all these integrated apps and services. And so it's going to allow me to easily find movies and shows that I'm looking for. I also can do something like this. I can hold down the side button and I can say, show me movies with Reese Witherspoon. So I just picked an actress there. And so it shows me June, The Good Lie, How Do You Know, Home Again. Some of these I don't even recognize. Let's see. Legally Blonde. That was one I knew she was in. Sweet Home Alabama. Definitely your SIRI will do that. And then you can also use SIRI while a movie or a show is playing. You can say something like rewind 15 seconds, or you can even say, what did they say? And it'll replay the last few seconds with subtitles so you make sure you know what they said. And again, we're going to talk about rewinding next week because there's some really cool features that go along with that. But you can use SIRI to do stuff like that, or you can say start this from the beginning, or skip ahead 5 minutes, or any kind of command like that SIRI is capable of doing. And there's quite a few. And so my advice to you, as it typically is just play with SIRI, because there's no possible way that I'm going to be able to tell you everything that it does, because I don't even know. But it's not going to do everything that it will do on your phone or even your HomePod. You can't use it to schedule something on your calendar or add something to the grocery list. At least not right now. Maybe they'll change that if they start, combining some of these smart home devices, but not right now. So there's lots of things you cannot do with it. It's designed for TV related things mostly. You can ask it about sports scores. You can ask it about sports teams and things like that. The control center, just like on your iPhone and your iPad, you have a control center, and it allows you to access your Wi-Fi settings. It allows you to access your AirPlay settings. It allows you to access Bluetooth and a variety of other things, including multi-user support, because on an Apple TV, you can have more than one Apple account so that people can switch back and forth and watch their favorite movies and their favorite shows without affecting everybody else's watch history. And to get to the control center, the button directly to the right of the back button is the TV button. It is technically the top right button on the remote below the click pad, but I don't want to confuse you when I say top right, because there is a button at the very, very top right corner that's your power button. It's not that, but it's in this consistent row of buttons. It's the one on the right at the top, and you press and hold it for about a second or two, and it brings up the control center. And what it has things in rows here. The first row is control center. If I go to the right, it says user. And if I go back to the left of control center, it says home kit. And that's it. Home kit, control center, and user. And whenever I'm on the one that I want, I press the down button and I can see things like in control center, for example, power off, Wi-Fi, do not disturb. Let's see.
Audio sources.
Audio sources. Yep, that's right. Game controllers. Now, you're going to have to.
And you'll also see your HomeKit cameras in there if you have any connected also, too.
That's correct. That's in the HomeKit section. And that's what I was going to say. You're going to want to play with the control center a little bit, because there are three categories, control center, HomeKit, and users. And when you go down, they display whatever you've selected. But if you keep moving left and right, you're automatically going to be taken to the next category or previous category. So you just want to play with it to see all the options. Your audio sources are in there. As Cliff said, your HomeKit devices, HomeKit cameras, and again, the users section, which is going to allow you, if you have multiple users set up, to quickly switch back and forth. And the benefit of that is, for example, if you want to watch something on your account, it's also going to sync with your iPad, your iPhone, your Mac. But if you want to watch, maybe your wife, husband, son, daughter, whatever, something that they really like, if you watch it on their account, it will sync with their iPad and their iPhone and their account on the Mac or whatever. So this is a really powerful feature, for the Apple TV, because it's multi-user support, and it really allows this to be an entire family device. There's a lot of things that we watch together as a family, for sure, but every once in a while there are certain things that one of us prefers that the other one doesn't, and so that gives us the flexibility to have them sync with our devices and to be on our profiles.
One thing I just wanted to point out, I don't think that I don't know if you went over there or not, but when you have multiple users on one account, so say Matt's watching or listening to some music, and I don't like his show, or I don't want to mess up his progress, I can switch to my account, and it'll automatically switch to my Apple Music and my TV Plus set favorites and all that stuff. So I just wanted to point that out. There's some apps that it doesn't work with. I don't think it works with third parties like Netflix and Paramount Plus and stuff like that, because those have their own profiles. But as it relates to the TV app, when you switch profiles, then that person's watch history will be the one displayed as well as Apple Music. So
the third-party apps typically don't, because they have their own profiles in them. But your music, your podcast, and also even your photos and there are games that use Game Center. They do typically sync with your account so that your Game Center progress is the same as it is on your other devices. So that is a good part of that too.
I have a smart TV. I have the Samsung, and it's accessible. It actually has a built-in screen reader. I mean, it's not voiceover, but I will say, and some people might get mad at me about this, but I just like to tell the truth. But I will say that the Samsung screen reader is better than the Fire Stick screen reader. It's more accurate. It gives you better feedback and better quality voice, in my opinion. I don't need it, but I did play with it when I first got my TV, because I had to turn on, ARC and some audio options. And I even signed into Netflix just to see what the experience was like. But once I had my Apple TV set up, then I turned that voice off, and use the Apple TV only. But yes, I do have a smart TV with a screen reader, the Samsung series built into it. So
Well, it's fairly hard nowadays to buy a TV that isn't a smart TV, and in a lot of ways that's a very good thing because you do have a screen reader that can help you know what input you're on and things of that nature. Um, but yes, I agree. I have a Vizio and an LG, both of which are smart, both of which have apps, both of which have screen readers, and they get the job done if you need them. But I do prefer, obviously, by a long shot, I prefer the Apple TV with voiceover. And some people might be asking, why would I need an Apple TV if I have a smart TV that has Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime and everything? And some of them even have the live TV services now. But the Apple TV is going to do a much better job of syncing with your other devices because if you're an Apple user already, it just, with iCloud and continuity and everything. Plus, the quality of Apple's hardware and software is truly unbeatable. They have the best operating system, the best experience, and they also put almost comically powerful CPUs in their Apple TV. So, for example, the current Apple TV that is available, which they're saying may be replaced by a new one later this year, but even the current one has the processor that I think was in either the iPhone 13 or 14. I mean, now why does why does an Apple TV need that powerful of a processor? But you're going to see when you start using it by comparison to your Fire Stick or your smart TV or something, which in my opinion tend to have very underpowered processors. And so they're very laggy, especially with a screen reader. You click something and it takes you a full second to hear what you clicked. And when it loads, it takes a while. Even Xfinity, which is my second favorite to the Apple TV, the X1 set-top box. It's phenomenal. Comcast has spent billions of dollars, as far as I know, investing in that entertainment platform. And it shows it is good. And its screen reader is good, but it's still slower than Apple. It's still not quite what, to me, Apple is just the best of the best. And that's all there is to it. And that's not meant to disparage anybody or what they're doing at all. But it's a consumer market. You have a choice, and I choose Apple. God bless you all. Thanks so much for coming. Thanks to Cliff for all your help. And of course, everybody have a great rest of your week and a great weekend.
thanks for joining today's session. Didn't get your question answered? Have an additional comment or feedback? Email us info@ttjtech.biz or info@stiritup.com. And remember, stir is spelled with a U. That's STURITUP.com. Or check out our websites for additional resources. That's ttjtech.biz or stiritup.com. And remember, subscribe to the newsletter when you're there. That way, you don't miss out on any upcoming announcements or events. Thanks for joining us. God bless, and see you next time.